Recording in progress.
You'll have to make me a co-host.
Sir, I have shared the screen sharing rights. You can share the screen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So please allow me 2 minutes. I just have to play one video, and after that you can
Yeah,
start.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I will interrupt your screen sharing, sir.
Yeah.
Very pleased and welcome to one and all present here. We welcome you to Genesis, presented by Harriet in association with D2C. To start our session, we have a small video from our sponsors.
Mom told me, अगर जॉब नहीं लगी ना तो शादी करा देंगे. Thanks to Hirect, where I could directly chat with the startup founders and get a job I deserve.
That's nice.
You're on mute.
Okay, it's my great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker, Mr. J.P. Singh, who is going to talk to us about leadership in a startup, how to mold an organization from scratch to a successful firm. J.P. Singh, he is a visionary leader who has over 30 years of experience of being a successful business leader. He equips leaders to better navigate all aspects of their strategic challenges and to strengthen their business perspective and leadership effectiveness. He is also a noted marketing wizard by his colleagues. His motivated attention to the person as well as the job at hand increased the investment of his team and resulted in successful business campaigns. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to come here. I'm sure everyone here will be benefited from your great work. The stage is all yours, sir. You can start.
Thank you so much. That was a nice video for startups. So thanks to the Genesis team, to all the students at the campus. I am from the 21st batch and definitely have a special affinity for the campus students. So really honored to be sharing with you some thoughts. As the topic says, leadership in a startup, the key focus I will probably try to put on is how to mold an organization from a scratch to a successful firm. So needless to say, in this time span available to us, we may not be able to do full justice to the entire topic. It's a huge subject, and therefore I will try to outline the approach without getting into details of operations, marketing, finance, how to, leverage each of these functions as we go along. So my focus will be primarily on an approach and a direction we can take. And what is most important in this journey to mold is a mindset. Or rather, I call it a growth mindset or a mind flow rather, so that you don't set the mind, but have it flowing and open to thoughts and external influences as time passes. So I will try to cover some aspects which are not essentially, all-inclusive, exhaustive, but a line of thinking and a direction. And I hope you keep that line of thinking in mind. And as we go along, if there is any need, any questions which can be answered today or maybe later on, I'll be open to interact and have a session with you again. So the primary point of a startup is, it's a creation, and therefore, like we are all creative, we are all creations of God. A startup, fundamentally, if I speak of the mindset or an approach, needs to be looked at as a creation, as an organism, as a living organism, and the whole perspective and the approach that you have to it takes a different shape. So we look at it as a creation, and it's in a way our giving back to the creator who created us. And we need to look at it in a manner that, when there is a birth in our families, there's a lot of, excitement and pain. And as the child is born, after that, there's needed a lot of nurturing and growth. So it's not just about the nature of birth alone, but after that, the journey starts, and that journey is of nurturing. And in that journey of nurturing, what becomes very important is, we very often look at leadership as a masculine trait, ordering, pushing, giving instructions. But what's important in such a situation where we want to mold is getting motherly instincts and a feminine orientation. So from hardcore quantitative, hardcore thoughts, we need to mold it with a more of a feminine and a nurturing motherly instinct. And that role becomes very important as we go along, because that is what develops culture and values of the organization if it has to grow and sustain for a longish time. So I will use the metaphor of a living organism, if that's the metaphor we use for this kind of an organization. When an organism is born, and I use the metaphor of a single-celled, living being. And this living being, if you see in the visual, it has all the functions within. Different organelles all form have their roles. But this is a single-celled organism, much like a startup entrepreneur who would be doing all activities on his own, and more like a freestyle swimmer. He would grapple with everything and whatever takes him forward. As we go along, what becomes more and more important is not just being a freestyle swimmer and a single swimmer, but this unicellular organization, if we learn from it, cannot grow on its own. So when it has to grow, it has to expand. It has to expand its boundaries. It has to become multicellular. And when it becomes multicellular, it has multiple cell walls, cell membranes to interact with the environment. It has organelles which start taking a shape, a specific role. And like a human being, when this single-celled organism evolves into more evolved organisms like a human being, each of these cells or clusters of cells take on a role. And that role is centrally controlled by the brain. Now, that's a metaphor that I want to leave behind with you as a thought of a single-celled organism which does all its functions to a multicellular organism, which is like an organization, and each organ takes on a role and becomes specialized. So the role of an entrepreneur from a freestyle swimmer who does everything now shifts to leadership and guiding people and coordination kind of a role. And in nature, while we talk and hear too much about mutation these days, but if you look at the history of evolution, a lot of evolution was possible because of sharing of gene pools between species or species coexisting in a symbiotic manner. And that's how different startups, when they're small, if they have to grow, they have to first have their organelles specializing, which means you take specialists, and the entrepreneur takes more of a leadership role. And they have to symbiotically coexist with other organizations and interact. That's the base on which I will move forward. When that is the mindset and that's an approach of an organization as a living being, all the feelings and all the thoughts of nurturing, of growth come up. And that's important for an entrepreneur to keep in mind as you would nurture a child. So when you launch something new, this is a study done by Hay Group on 50 successful Indian CEOs. So it's a very relevant study. And I'm sharing this with you because it's relevant for India. Two, it's relevant to the topic. 50 successful Indian CEOs who shared their views on what they think is successful for a leader or CEO in India. And they shared, their views. And this is a culling of all the views together. And they said, when you launch something new, for real success at that point in time, what you need is to keep the team energized, like a freestyle swimmer would do. Inner strength, because challenges are many, many. It's like, a caterpillar. When the caterpillar is growing, it's struggling. It struggles with the shell. And there's a story that a child looked at a caterpillar struggling and took pity and took off the shell, thinking that it will help the caterpillar. But it didn't realize that the moment it broke the shell, the caterpillar turned around and fell. Now, the learning here is that the caterpillar is got that shell so that it can stretch its muscles and build strength, so that when it grows wings, those muscles are strong enough to hold the wings and give it strength. And that is what really, the struggles and the challenges that an entrepreneur faces are all like, pains, labor pains, or strengthening. When you exercise, you strengthen the muscles. So a lot of challenges which make the entrepreneur successful in the initial period. What they also need to keep in mind is socially responsible business excellence, which means to keep alive, in a responsible manner, an entrepreneurial drive and execution excellence. And that all this is, mind you, the startup entrepreneur grappling with all on his own. And he has to also manage the environment. So when the things change in an environment, the entrepreneur has to keep track, and she herself does it. She may not have too many, like a single-celled organism. She may not have too many eyes and ears to figure out what's happening. So you would see an entrepreneur going around and she's grappling with the entire world on her own, running around morning, night, evening. So that's how, when she launches something new, the entrepreneur leads her initial days. And now comes the point of moving forward and molding the organization. And what is important then at improving businesses for real success, energizing the team remains important, because you have to take the team along. And there is energizing of the team with a shared meaning. Now, I'll come to that a little later. These aspects of shared meaning are like sharing of energy flow, and that add a hell of a lot of efficiency to the system and growth. To drive change, internally and externally both. And as her business grows, she has to keep also looking at empowering the team, because she can't do it herself now. And these are, significant changes in behavior and approach that she has to do. We will touch a little bit on this as we go along. She has to start looking at empowering more, but with accountability, because she can't do everything herself now. And therefore providing team leadership to mold the startup from scratch to a successful firm. Networking becomes important. As I said, symbiotic coexistence. Gene pool trading is important for species to evolve. So also in this metaphor of an organization as an organism. And continuous adaptive thinking. If you would have seen in the last 2 years, from a physical workspace to hybrid, this is an extreme situation where things change so much. But this continuous adaptive adaptive thinking is very important, and the entrepreneur has to think on the feet all the time. Because today the environment is so unpredictable, so unstable, so indeterminate. But you have to be prepared for that. And one key point that these 50 successful CEOs shared in the research was that as the firm grows, individual brilliance or individual personal drive, which is like the entrepreneur was doing in earlier days, may be actually counterproductive. Because she now wants to do everything on her own. But if the business has to grow, she has to empower, she has to delegate, she has to let people handle it. And that's where specialization of organisms and organs comes up. Like in the human body, now with a multicellular structure, we have specialized organs. We have a heart doing something, we have lungs doing something. Similarly, if the organization has to grow, she has to mold it. She has to get more and more people, train them, develop them, and delegate as they become more adept and experts in handling their roles. And that delegation allows her to, use. A lot of people I've trained or coached say that we don't have time. We are always fighting fires. The main point is that they haven't learned how to delegate. And therefore, when this happens, you get free time to network, to have adaptive thinking, new ways of working, doing business, focus more on strategy. Because as you grow higher up in the organization, or as you evolve or grow the organization, the operational role becomes smaller and smaller, and the strategic part, the thinking part becomes bigger. And if you don't have time, you will be grappling with nuts and bolts nitty-gritties all the time without thought of how to grow. And therefore, that's an issue which also runs through many successful family businesses as well, because at a point in time, they have to now depend and include professionals to do specific functions. Like you may need a finance head, you may need a production head, an HR head to bring in professionalism into the organization. So that becomes critical if the organization has to continue to grow, very much like a single-celled organization to a multicellular organization. Now, based on this metaphor of an organism, if your organization, if your startup has to be successful and to be transformed into a successful firm or a strong firm, it has to behave like an adult now, like a living organism. And what becomes important, even in nature and ecosystems, is these are specific qualities of these are signs. How do you know someone is alive? How do you know it's a living being? How do you know it's a living organization now? These are some of the characteristics which show that the organization is alive, that the organism is alive. It demonstrates interdependence, recycling. Apart from the ESG and CSR related activities that are being talked about today, recycling is a very efficient process for a startup to grow from scratch. It's effective and efficient in financial terms, in energy terms, in time terms. To have partnership, I was talking about the concept of networking and managing the environment. Flexibility, like last 2 years, you shift from office space to work from home to hybrid, changing business models. IT has suddenly transformed. Healthcare, Zoom was very flexible to meet the demand of a heightened video facility. Healthcare has lived up. There was so much demand on healthcare in the last 2 years. And adaptive thinking, adaptive actions led healthcare to rise up to the challenge. Diversity, the entrepreneur has now to look at building, and it's not just gender diversity. She has to look at racial diversity, functional diversity, skills diversity, all kinds of different skills and know-how that she can now use to fuel and to add wind to her wings as she takes flight. The fundamental issue with a living organism is that it stays in a non-equilibrium state. It never gets into an equilibrium state, and it stays away from, and it's called a dynamic balance because the environment changes. And therefore, the organism has to stay in a dynamic balance to keep adjusting to the external demands and to readjust itself internally. So it's very, very critical to remain agile. The entrepreneur has to be in touch with the environment and make sure that it's not a fixed mindset, but a growth mindset, and be adaptive all the time, thinking on their feet. And therefore, I continue using the term, I prefer using a term mind flow rather than just a mindset, where you are in a state of flow all the time, like a boxer on her feet. and she sees where the punch is coming from and returns it back or tries to avoid it. The system, a living system, has to be self-organizing to quickly readjust and reorganize to demands of the environment. If suddenly there was demand on the healthcare system, the doctors, the nurses quickly reorganized themselves in the last 2 years and came up with the challenge. To video talks, to online consulting, and that was a change which happened very fast. The doctors, the medical system realigned, self-regulating to make sure that I sense what's going on and regulate my response accordingly. Feedback loops from outside to inside the organization and within the organization. All these are signs of an organization being alive, of exchanging energy and matter with the environment, and being alive cognitively, thinking, processing information. The thinking part of an organization has to be alive to pick up signals from outside and to adapt quickly, to be self-adaptive, self-regulating. And this becomes very important as startups have to grow because the demands on their time and activity are immense. And therefore, the entrepreneur has to be all the time alive and thinking, adaptive to new ways of thinking. That brings me to, if the entrepreneur has to look at all these, there are 4. If she has to be alive and if she has to keep the organization alive, mind you, the moment all the things that I shared with you, they cease to be existing, the dynamism of the organism or the organization dies and it's not alive anymore. And therefore, all these things that I shared with you in relation to a living organization and an organism are important signs that my startup is alive, my startup is kicking. And it'll do good to the entrepreneur if she keeps her eyes on each of these as a process she builds into her organization. So she has to have a sense of direction. 5 senses, like a living organism like us. A sense of direction, sense of discovery, sense of discipline, sense of destiny, and sense of delight. So taking them one by one, a sense of direction is, what is it? Very often the entrepreneur takes on something because she sees someone else successful and someone else doing it very well. If she's fundamentally in line with her life purpose, with what she really revels in, what she really likes, what she's passionate about. And in India, in Indian philosophy, we call it my swadharma. There are various ways that ikigai is one way that people talk about it. When we pick up something which is not in line with my ikigai, with my life purpose, with my swadharma, there is lack of harmony, and friction sets in, and monotony sets in. And very often, a lot of startups fail because of a misalignment between my purpose or lack of clarity of purpose. And strategy and financial issues don't matter at that stage. They can be cracked. They can be found out in later stages. But what is critical is, do I have a business which is meeting my life purpose? So you have your own mission, and is my business in line with that mission? And once this is in line, the entrepreneur sets up goals and action plans accordingly. I use this kind of a mission for myself. And everything that happens, I use my mission statement as a touchstone. So today's talk, for example, I picked up because it helps you people in realizing your potential. But I don't want to do it by ordering and telling. So therefore, it's a facilitating process. It's a co-creation process, co-sharing process. Anything which falls in line with this is what I'll pick up. And anything which is not in line with this, I generally tend to avoid in some way. so that there's no friction that sets in, there's no boredom that sets in, there's no monotony that sets in. So once we set our own direction with our own, swadharma, so to say, we need to discover what are our strengths. What am I strong at? And there are various terms, like I said, which are used for it. These are important because unless these are there, you cannot mold the organization from scratch to a successful firm, because somewhere the pressure will set in and it'll hold the flow back. So we look at what is it that I love, what is it that I'm really good at, what is it that the world needs, and therefore what is it that it can paid for. And that is called ikigai. You must have heard the term so much. And it's same as if you read the book Good to Great, Jim Collins used this term called hedgehog principle, which says if you have to go from good to great, you should know what you're passionate about, what are you best in the world at, and what drives your economic engine. So there are similar concepts, but it's not easy to figure out these for yourself. And therefore, the entrepreneur should spend a lot of time in trying to look at these and understanding these. Sometimes it takes months and years to really fine-tune my ikigai or my hedgehog. In borrowing from Indian philosophy, you need to really look at your higher purpose. These are calls, which really Narayan Murthy in Infosys or Nandan Nilekani, they were fired by a higher purpose, making it, or Google or Apple, Google was fired by the purpose of making information available to all. Apple was fired by desktop on every table, and aesthetics and design. That was a high purpose, to give that aesthetics and design in a creative way. That's a signature that runs across all Apple products. So each of these organizations which took off, which became passionate about what they do, are all striving, are all trying to meet their high purpose. I know of an organization in Hyderabad, if someone knows, it's called the L.V. Prasad Eye Institute. In 30 years, the founder was a very successful doctor in the US, in Rochester, and he came back to give his knowledge and experience to India. Within 30 years, he's made it a network of 5 centers of excellence or tertiary centers, 200 vision centers across the Andhra, Telangana, Orissa, and Karnataka. But it's driven by total passion. And all these things come into play. Otherwise, at some stage, growth stops, monotony sets in, and the engine starts slowing down. I see a message in chat. Yeah, Vani, I saw your message. How does one communicate to all members and be agile? Changes are needed. Yes, it's a iterative process. It has to be, in this, it's a startup. At that stage, it's important that the partners and the founders get together and iterate. Like I said, sometimes a hedgehog or an ikigai or a mission statement can take months and years to polish. And it's not about semantics. It's important that each word is selected carefully so that everyone's aspiration and motivation is included. And then you have a shared meaning. Unless everyone is covered with a shared meaning, the whole push, what we call resonance in an organization, will not happen. And the entrepreneur will find that she's always pulled back. There's resistance to the flow. And yes, you are right, Vani. It takes time. It takes iteration. It takes multiple meetings. But it's so important that most failures don't happen because of finances. They don't happen because of lack of strategy. They happen because the partners do not have a shared mindset. They do not share the same values or the purpose. There is one who would want to, just a way of saying to do good for the society and give it back. There may be another one who wants, quick returns and therefore compromising on long-term gains or building value. So the classical case of value creation or valuation, and a lot of startups have fallen by the wayside because of this clash of partners or co-founders who could not meet on a common purpose. So Karunya is saying, what are your views on punitive measures for deterrence purposes to avoid breaking code of values? See, punitive measures can be used only when there are disciplinary issues, when integrity issues come up. We cannot force people into a culture or values. We select them for skills or values, more for values, less for skills, because skills can be trained, can be developed. Therefore, it's important that there are shared values, but it doesn't mean that everyone becomes clones. There are opinions that can come in, and therefore it's important to have diverse viewpoints. I was speaking to someone at Accenture, and there's a very good line they have. It's called obligation to dissent. It's a beautiful line. So if someone has a different viewpoint, it's an obligation that we dissent and share, voice our opinion. You cannot align people through punitive measures. A personal view, people, you can force people into following, but long-term sustenance is more of alignment and value systems. Yeah, Karunya, I hope I've been able to answer your point. Okay. So then we have 25 minutes more. We'll need some time for more questions. Okay. Dikshit, is there a need to align values across the entire value ecosystem for an organization? Dikshit, ideally, yes. It's a like Karunya's question, do you give it, is there a punitive measure? If values are aligned across the entire value ecosystem, if the culture is, it flows from top down, percolates, that's the best form to do it. Absolutely. As in suppliers and vendors as well. And I'm talking of, most desirable, most ideal situations. And a lot of companies, for example, Unilever has spent a lot of effort and time in creating the distribution chain. It's a very, very successful distribution chain. And a lot of time has gone into suppliers and vendors. So then, it's so important that when you spend so much effort in creating a product or service, at each level down up to the consumer, the same value system is transferred. Otherwise, the entrepreneur herself will feel very pressurized. She can't be there all the time. As startups, do we have the power to reach alignment via dialogue, or is there resistance to the same? Resistance will always happen. there will always be conflict, Dikshit. There will be difference of opinions. And therefore, if the purpose and the values align, then the differences can be reached via dialogue. Resistance or difference of opinion is always there. Therefore, at the start, if you read Jim Collins' Good to Great, he says, first who, then what, which means first get the right people on the bus. If there are right people, and right people by, if the entrepreneur has ensured that she gets people with the right purpose and the right values, she can always add on skills as she goes along. So, Dikshit, yes, there's no one answer to all of these, but it's an approach. If done well in some ways, there's a spectrum of how people would want to deal. And most of it that I'm sharing with you is my viewpoint. There may be people with another viewpoint, but I strongly believe that dialogue and alignment is very, very critical. If going back to the metaphor of our body, when a healthy body has alignment with all the organs, and when one organ starts complaining, there is pain. And it's a similar metaphor that works in a startup. For the body to be in alignment, the circulatory system, the nervous system, the nervous system is central. It sends messages. The circular system, the respiratory system, they bind the whole body together. And any dissonance there can create problems. I hope the living organism metaphor sort of, helps you understand these better. It's a huge subject, and I'm trying to, give you answers in as precise way as possible. But anything you want to discuss later on at any point in time, I'm more than happy to share with you. Let's quickly move to the other three senses, so to say, that I have to call them. Sense of discipline. Once you've discovered your direction, your strengths, your values, your passion, you need to execute it. And that's, good orderly discipline is what God, the acronym is God. When God created all of us, after creation, he also made natural laws. And we are thriving and surviving because of that discipline. So for a startup to grow fully into a successful firm, having realized the mission and the purpose and the values, it's very important to stick to disciplines. Ways. I think it was Jim Collins in his book Great by Choice. He uses a term called SMAC, specific, measurable, and consistent. SMAC, specific, measurable, and consistent. In our training and coaching world, they use a term called SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Because minus these, talks and discussions are philosophical, and a startup cannot survive or thrive on philosophy alone. Philosophy plays a very important role in setting up the approach, but good discipline and action is absolutely critical. And even when God created this world, his creation, he ensured that discipline is there by natural laws. So there are 3 C's in Vedanta, they call it concentration, specific thing that you do, concentrate on that, do it consistently, and do it in alignment. Vedanta shares these 3 points for success in this material world. So when you draw from different aspects, you're all saying the same thing. Jim Collins or Vedanta, they're all saying the same thing of finding your purpose, concentrating, doing it consistently, and align with each other. So we need people discipline, we need thought discipline, and we need action discipline. In the same book I'm using as a base, Tim Collins talks of fanatic discipline. Look at the strong words and adjectives he is using, which tells you how significant these become when you have to become great by design, by choice. And that's what a startup has to do. It has to become great by design. It won't happen accidentally. Paranoia, which is productive. Steve Jobs was paranoid about productivity, about design. And they say, but his paranoia, if you see, was very productive. And it was a creative paranoia. That kind of paranoia, what we call junoon in India, is what people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Narayana Murthy, Nandan Nilekani. Narayana Murthy and Nandan Nilekani were passionate about what they did, come what may. These days, there's a clip going viral, a clip by Sudha Murthy, where she talks about passion and how Narayana Murthy was traveling 20 days, 22 days, and she hardly met him. And jokingly, she says that was the reason for their marriage to last so long. But on a serious note, this fanatic discipline, productive paranoia, and empirical creativity. Empirical creativity is to test out things and then measure them and then take a call. So like you don't fire cannonballs right in the beginning, but fire bullet shots. See whether they are hitting the target. Because otherwise, resources are always tight for a startup. And before the entrepreneur chooses to fire all the resources, he should test them out, amongst different options. Like, in economics, they say resources are always limited and there are unlimited demands. So if she has to use resources effectively and productively, she should first test the bullets, then fire a cannonball. This is another important aspect that entrepreneurs can keep in mind, and it's called situational leadership model. I was telling you how she has to now develop people who just say it in a simple manner. Don't get confused by the complex slide. But as people move from low competence, look at the lower side, from low competence on a task to slight competence to moderate to high competence. This 2x2 matrix shows high directive behavior. And there was a question by, I think, Deekshit or Varuna about penal actions and what works better. Now, this is partly throwing light on that. So what you do is, on the x-axis, there's directive behavior, and the y-axis is supportive behavior. So when people are moving from low competence in an initial team formation, and they don't understand the nitty-gritties of it, you use a directive style. So this level corresponds to a directive style, high directive. Then they gain some confidence, but they're still not fully confident, and use a coaching style, which needs both directive and supportive. And that's how the entrepreneur now molds the team and the organization, because she has to, at this stage, start delegating, start empowering, but with accountability. So if a person does not, if a team member does not have skills, you can't make them accountable. And you can't blame them later on, because very often the entrepreneur says, but yeah, I did delegate, but finally they couldn't do it and I had to take it myself. A lot of my coaches, raise this kind of point. But the point is, they delegate without training or directing. It's only later when they become more adept that you start taking a supportive role as leadership, and tell them, okay, come back only if you need advice. The frequency of meetings is high as a discipline at the directing stage, and as the person becomes more and more competent, the frequency of meetings can also go down, and you delegate and empower them with, and you say, okay, now it's yours, you run it. A lot of team members say, why are you micromanaging? And that's another issue that comes up with entrepreneurs. From the startup to the next stage, they cannot give up because they're so passionate about their baby. They think, no one else can do it as good as me. And therefore, you end up doing everything yourself. Or if you are also aligning roles, allocating roles to people, you would micromanage. And so the entrepreneur should know that she has to spend time in directing and developing people initially because they're new to the project, to the task. You have to share the goals with them. So like it says here, set goals, stay connected with them, and keep giving feedback. So you keep this discipline on. I was talking of a sense of discipline. Depending on the stage of evolution of your team, you have the rigor of or rhythm of meetings and reviews. And very often, it becomes critical for an entrepreneur to, you can't look at all the business dynamics. Pick up a critical number. The most critical number which you keep an eye on a daily basis. So the entrepreneurs, wherever she is, if she gets a daily report on that critical number, she'll know things are going right. In the previous Marwari setups, they used to look at the cash at the end of the day. And that was a critical number they looked at all the time. How much is the cash at the end of the day? I was running a contact lens business earlier when it was a new concept and we had to build in more and more awareness and desire. One number, and we had to spend a lot of money on converting people to contact lenses. The number that we used was cost per conversion because we didn't have too much money and we wanted to get more and more people converted to contact lenses. So cost per conversion is a critical number that I picked up at that stage. And we used to have it, almost like, you have these instruments attached to a patient, ECG, thermometer, oxygen level, everything to monitor. And finally, you get the health of the business. An entrepreneur will do well to look at a critical number and she gets feedback on it every day. And that leads us to a sense of destiny where having done all this, where do you go? Where do I visualize? What's my vision? Where am I headed in the next, we talk of the next 5 years, but COVID showed us that it can be very disruptive. But still, knowing a sense of direction of, or a destiny is important. Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, he said, luck is the residue of design. So you have to design where you want to go by choice. You can take actions, disciplined action, to discipline people and discipline thought to take you where you want to. And it's important, So if you look at this two axes, on the x-axis is luck. Good luck on the right and bad luck on the left. And on the y-axis is return on luck. High return on luck is preparation. When luck happens, am I prepared? Or if luck doesn't happen, am I prepared then also? So luck is bad. If I'm prepared, at least you may be on the right track. If it's good luck and high preparation, we are winners. So it's not luck alone that matters. It takes a terrible lot of preparation, the sense of direction, the sense of discovery, discipline, fanatic discipline, as they say. And if luck doesn't go well, you still may be on the right track if you're prepared. If both luck and preparation is bad, then obviously the business hits deadline. So hopefully, God is kind, luck is on our side, preparation is critical. You may have good luck, but not preparation. The startup leads to mediocrity. So startup, the entrepreneur has to make very sure that she is prepared well, with the sense of, where does she want to go, what's her passion, what's the kind of discipline she'll ensure. And on the way, I'm just taking time as well. So I'll start wrapping up for any more questions that you may have. There are paradoxes and polarities, and the entrepreneur has to be very resilient, and a very high level of inner strength is needed to transcend self, not just me, but my business. That level of inner strength and maturity. Indian CEOs, the ones that I spoke to you about, they said spirituality helped us a lot. A reliance on spiritual principles, scriptures, whichever scriptures they talk about. But there are paradoxes. You have to be disciplined and you have to be creative. But how do I live with it? So our classical, Vijay Govindrajan talks of a three-box concept. We have Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. To manage the present, to keep destroying the past. When a hot air balloon has to go up, you keep dropping sandbags for it to take height. So very selectively, we have to abandon the past, and that's where Shiva comes in, and to create the future. So all these three are continuous cycles, and an entrepreneur will do well to look at those. Finally, I have a sense of delight, where whatever you do, if you're enjoying, if you have delight in doing it, if it's in line with your passion, it's in line with your, the starting point of life purpose, values, you'll enjoy it. Otherwise, there'll be friction. There'll be lack of harmony, and that is not delight. So have fun, have delight, celebrate your successes, and all the very best. So we have, I sped up in the last so that we have 4-5 minutes for any questions that you may have.
Sure, sir. Those were very enlightening words. So if any of our audience have any questions, they can post that up.
And I have my coordinates here in case someone wants to call, write.
That's very kind of you, sir.
It's easy to remember. It's just plain and simple. So my name JP Singh at just plain and simple.
Thank you, sir. So we will in future, if any of us.
So if there are no questions at this point in time, let me leave with a video. Let me see if I can share a message. Okay. We were talking of alignment and coordination as if the startup has to move from scratch to a successful. Let me leave you with a thought here through this video clip. It's about 2 to 3 minutes. Can you hear it?
No, sir. We are not able to see the video or hear the audio.
Okay, one second. You can't hear it?
No, sir. Sir, try sharing screen sound.
Yeah, I was just checking that. You could see the visual.
No, sir. Can you please stop and start resharing?
Yeah, one second. Yeah, got it right.
Yes, sir, we are able to hear you.
Updated winds are 240 at 10. We own the airfield and airspace. You are clear for takeoff. Have a good one. Thanks. Roll clear.
So we are not able to see or hear something. It's just a blank screen.
You can't?
No, sir.
You're not able to see? You're not able to see the video?
No, sir, we are not able to see.
Oh, I did the sharing, sound sharing
It was
also.
a blank. Yes, sir, it was a blank screen still.
There's something wrong with the setting because I shared the sound and video clip also. Anyways, so I guess, we're on time at 4 p.m. I don't want to take any more of your time. We can share the clip at a later meeting again. So thank you so much. But to share with you the video, it was basically from the US Air Force squadron called Blue Angels, where they coordinate and shared values at a very high speed. And what makes them successful is knowing each other too well, having shared purpose and shared values. That was the video about. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, sir, for thought-provoking words and your wisdom. It was our pleasure to host you today. I would like to end the session with a small video from our sponsors.
Post a new job and receive responses within 5 minutes. For a verified recruiter, posting a job can be done with a click of a button. Recruiters don't have to wait for candidates to apply. Candidate profiles are recommended based on the job post, and recruiters can start communicating with the recommended candidates immediately after posting the job. Privacy of the users is also protected. Personal information like phone number, CVs are shared only with consent. The communication can either be initiated by the recruiter or the candidate. In my case, you can see within 5 minutes of posting the job, the recruiter could chat directly, receive responses quickly, and even schedule interviews with the candidates. Within a few minutes, the recruiter can start expecting more candidates to view the job post and reach out to them by initiating a chat conversation. Since Hirect is mobile first, responses pour in any time of the day as most people are within the vicinity of their phone. A few hours later, as you can see here, a product manager job post was added by me last night, and by morning I have already received 15 plus chat requests from job seekers. You can see that my feed is full of product managers from top institutes and companies as matched by the algorithm. I'm able to initiate a chat with them and receive a response quickly, as I can see their last active time as well. Recruiters can receive responses from job seekers irrespective of the time of day or even at night as HiRect is mobile first and this makes it very accessible to the users. Direct chat, mobile accessibility, instant response, matching algorithm, secured privacy makes it 5 times better product for recruiters.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks to all
Great,
the
thank you so much.
Recording